All right, so let's talk about the 4 main influencing traits or aspects that we have within ourselves that plays into our decision-making factors. 1 is going to be the ego. 2 is the shadow. 3 is going to be the mind. And 4 is our intuition. Now, at the fundamental base of this whole, our base foundation is our intuition. And this is our main guide. This is our source of guidance, of inner wisdom and knowing. It is the trait that we have within ourselves that allows us to make decisions that are based on our highest good and greatest potential. But there's a big but. We have things like our ego, our mind, and our shadow that play into our decision-making factors and can actually override our intuition. Now, first, I'm going to talk about the intuition and why it's important to understand what the intuition is, how you can work with it, and how you can fine-tune it for your advantage. Now, we all have our intuition. I'm sure you understand or know what the intuition is, but let's do a recap. So the intuition is our internal guidance system. It's also connected with our third eye. It's connected with our senses. It's connected with our heart. It is how we feel about making decisions in life, how we feel around certain people, how we feel in relationships, how we feel about ourselves. So this is our guidance system. This is our truth. And oftentimes it can be suppressed or overridden by things like our mind or our ego or our shadow self. And within our shadow self, we also have our subconscious beliefs, and that is tied together with the shadow. And our subconscious beliefs are things like how we feel about ourselves, our ability to create success or not, how we feel about love and relationships and people and humanity and life. There are so many different subconscious beliefs that we have within our hardwired programming, and that is connected with our shadow self. So things like fear, resentment, anger, shame, guilt, criticism. These traits that we have within our shadow self do play into the decisions that we make in life, do play into the choices that we make. If we make active choices or passive choices, they are all affected by our subconscious and all affected by our shadow self and affected by our ego, and thus impacts our intuition. It impacts and it clouds our intuitive guidance. And so if you think of our intuitive guidance as pure source information, now that pure source information is going to get clouded by all of the constructs that we have developed throughout our entire life. It's going to become overclouded by our fears and our uncertainty and our shadow traits. It's going to be overclouded by our ego, wanting to prove, wanting to be right, maybe a sense of entitlement or pride. The ego comes in as our front-facing persona, or a very protective energy that we have built around us or within us that is a very active and very dominant energy that can override our intuition. And it's one thing understanding your intuition and knowing what it is and how it feels. It's another thing honoring it and trusting it, right? So we can feel certain things, but our ego might come in and say, no, that's not right, or this isn't going to work, or I can't believe this person did that, or what if I repeat the same mistakes again? I'm never going to trust anyone again. That's a bit of the ego. A bit of the ego and the shadow tied together. They do work interchangeably. So when the ego comes in, or when the shadow comes in, for example, then it is going to override our intuitive abilities and our intuition. If we come to a place of softness and stillness and alignment within ourselves, void of the ego and our shadow self, and just sit with how we feel about things, about a decision or about a relationship or about ourselves, then we can really tune into the guidance, but the greater knowing and the greater wisdom around that particular situation. And we all have the ability to tune in. But again, we have all these influences within us that get in the way. And also, I do want to mention that when our subconscious is active, when we are operating unconsciously through, again, our subconscious, through our shadow, even the ego, then we can become easily influenced by other people, meaning that whatever's happening in society, or if we feel pressure from family or friends or peers, then we could override our intuition, how we really feel about a certain choice or a certain direction in life or our true path and our truth. And that's why it's really important to meditate, to maybe partake in yoga, or just to spend time by yourself, to feel into your intuitive self, to feel into your body. And when we've gone through traumas in our body, we can often disconnect with our body and our feelings and our emotions. So our feelings and our senses and our body, it's all connected, and it's very connected with our intuition. But our shadow and our ego and our mind can override that connection within ourselves. So it's really important to create a connection with your body, with your emotions, with your feelings, which are your senses, and thus your intuition. It will heighten your intuitive abilities. And we all get those gut feelings, right? We all get those feelings and senses within us. But then again, as I mentioned, it's one thing feeling it, but it's another honoring it and staying true to how we feel. And that is really important. And so these are the exercises that we go through. But I do encourage you to work on the intuitive side of how you feel. Even if there's fear triggered, or even if there's uncertainty triggered, that's the ego, and it could be the shadow as well, coming in and overriding your intuitive senses. And your intuition is going to know based on pure information, wisdom, and knowledge, and the feelings, how I feel, what is my higher guidance, what do I see as the bigger picture, rather than getting hung up on what isn't working, or again, the kind of stubborn energy that the ego can come in and override with our intuitive sense. Now let's look at the mind. The mind is, of course, very logical, very analytical. We can overthink things too much. We can be in the mind too much. We live in a very logical, analytical world. This is how we've been programmed. So with this exercise, we're basically unraveling what we've been used to, or how we've been used to processing information, or decision making, for example, is basically unraveling those programs that we've been accustomed to, or ways that we've been accustomed to, and looking at it in a different way, or experiencing it in a different way within ourselves, tuning in rather than tuning out. And that's what happens when we overthink things, when we overanalyze, as we tune out. We're looking for information in the wrong places. And there's nothing wrong with being logical and thinking 5 steps ahead, or putting a bit of a process in place, and that is part of the rational thought. But our intuition is going to be the source of that decision making, of the choices that we make, of the guidance of moving in maybe a certain direction, or how we feel about people or relationships or ourselves or life, humanity, bigger picture stuff, right? So the mind is important for certain things, but not all things. And the mind can override our intuition, very much so. So how does the intuition feel again? It is all about your senses. The more you can connect with your body and your senses, so the greater your intuitive abilities will become. Meditation is important. Things like yoga, or spending time by yourself, going for long walks by yourself, and feeling through life situations and challenges and choices that you have to make, based on your senses, based on what feels right for you, not within the mind. And if you need time to make a choice, take time to feel your way through it. We don't need to rush through choices. It is all based, unless you know intuitively right away, that is fine and that's good. And it means that your intuition is strengthening. But if you're working through fine-tuning your intuition, just take your time with it. And again, spend time by yourself, go into meditation. You can even ask for guidance from your higher self, and you will feel it. Things will show up for you, the synchronicities, answers will come to you. You'll all of a sudden have an inkling to do something differently, or to take the initiative in a new direction. That is trusting your guidance, and that is trusting your intuition. All right, so I hope this helped you understanding the differences. And of course, your intuition is your inner guide. And the more that you can honor it and go into your intuition and feel into what your intuition is trying to tell you, the greater your intuitive gifts will become. And you won't have to really think about it. You won't have to really contemplate. You'll just know. And it will come from a greater understanding, a greater wisdom, a place of greater wisdom. And it's a very expansive understanding. So it will grow over time. And the next step is really to honor it. And that is where some of the shadow work does come in. And understanding the ego and the shadow and how it can be playing into some of the decision-making factors. All right, so I hope that offered additional guidance for your transformative journey and beyond. And don't forget to find me on Patreon to join a thriving and supportive community for furthering your spiritual and transformative journey. I look forward to seeing you there, and I'm wishing you all the best. Until next time, see you soon and take care.